Everybody has a comfort game, or a set of comfort games that they find themselves returning to once they're done playing whatever new game they got. Or maybe some other game had an update and they finished it and now they need something to play in between new games and updates. Some great examples of this are games like Warframe, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Overwatch, for some reason, GTA 5, Stardew Valley. For me, those games are Payday 2, Team Fortress 2, and Killing Floor 2. And recently, a game that isn't a sequel has crawled its stressful ass into my bed and sucked all the warmth out of my body because it ran out of coal. And I can't think of a better time to talk about this game when it's this hot where I live. That's right, baby, we're talking about Frostpunk. This depressing Polish-made game is brought to us by 11-Bit Studios, and despite its tone and themes, it's a game I've sunk quite a bit of time into. But before I do this, there's something I'm gonna need. Something to get me into the right headspace. Let's do this. All right, I've been waiting 4 years to make this video. Frostpunk is depressing. It's really depressing. Imagine watching everyone around you die as you struggle to survive the world freezing over, as children have to pick up the slack of the adults because they cough themselves to death while trying to collect the coal they need to keep themselves warm. Oh hi, Texas, February 2021. I can't tell you how many times I've lost at this game, and unlike Dark Souls, which everyone seems to be quick to compare challenging games to, each attempt in Frostpunk can cost you hours. Seriously, I must have wasted 10 to 12 hours before I finally caved in and played the base scenario on easy and still barely survived. A city of over 600 people gone, almost defeated by the harsh winter, leaving a little over 100 people to carry on, but hey, I got the achievement, so I'm calling it a win! Good God, that gene pool is fucked. Wait, I just realized. Game might be made in Poland, but it actually takes place in the UK, and we're making moonshine. So, I'm gonna need some of that. Now, with every loss in Frostpunk, there's something new that was discovered. With every attempt, something that was learned, and even now, I'm still learning new things. There's so much that the game doesn't tell you and that you need to figure out by yourself, and honestly, I love it when games do this. At least to a certain degree. Like Stardew Valley, it's a great example. There's no tutorial that pops up to tell you that the decision to have extended shifts could lead to death. You just have to learn that the first time will go smoothly, but the second time guarantees a death. And every time afterwards, it's basically a crapshoot. But some lessons Frostpunk has to teach are not easy to figure out at first. The mistakes you make may not be apparent until you're further along and you realize that something you missed hours ago is catching up to you now. Mistakes I've made that weren't apparent until later on are, but not limited to, running out of wood, not gathering coal fast enough, not upgrading from tents to bunkhouses soon enough, not gathering steel fast enough, not having enough medical posts, not using extra food to heal people faster, not making enough food, forgetting to set cookhouses to make soups, still having morals, not having better hunters, or hunter gear, or enough workers to be hunters, not having enough automatons, not having enough security coverage, not setting the steam hubs to operate during certain times, only having one scout, only having one research facility, not researching more heating for the generator and rely only on steam hubs, not realizing that your giant robot spiders need the generator to be on to work, not having enough prosthetics or too many amputations, making promises you can't keep, and finally, forgetting that I've made promises and forgetting to keep them. Some of these problems weren't apparent until later on in the game. Like, how was I supposed to know that all these locations are on the map? Or that once completing the purpose policy tree would hope be maxed out permanently? Or that having multiple research facilities is necessary to win the game? Seriously, that last one, I did not realize for like the first 2 or 3 runs. Once you realize that research is holding you back and that you should basically be getting one thing done a day, you realize, oh, okay, this game is not supposed to be this difficult. Like wood. Wood is one that's deceptive, all right? I can't tell you how many runs I've had where I realized, oh, crap, I accidentally ran out of wood. And there's no way for me to get more wood until my scouts get back. If that ever happens where you don't have any means of getting more wood and you have to wait for your scouts, you might as well just restart. Because I'm sorry, but you ain't gonna make it. And if you're gonna be playing on the hardest difficulty, you're gonna be min-maxing in some weird ways. Like, to do the hardest difficulty, sometimes you just have to let people get cold, just so that way they'll ask you to do something about it, so that way then you can take care of it, and then they'll be happier than they would have without that. Like, some weird form of gaslighting. That's right, on the hardest difficulty, you're gonna have to start gaslighting your followers. Okay, let's take a step back here. I've talked a lot about some areas of the game's mechanics, but I haven't really discussed what Frostpunk is. Frostpunk is a city survival simulator where you're put in charge of a group of people who must survive an ice age with nothing but the resources around them and a generator. It's up to you to make the decisions and organize your area to allow them to survive, which I think we've established is easier said than done. I mean, playing on easy and normal isn't too bad and allows for you to make some mistakes and still recover if you know what you're doing. These difficulties offer the most freedom in how you want to handle the situation. But once you start playing on hard, morals go right out the window. For instance, on lower difficulties, I can get by without having soups or child labor, but on hard, I'm sorry, Timmy, looks like you're picking up coal for the day. Don't make me get my belt! Honestly, child labor isn't even the worst thing you can do in this game to keep the city alive. Boy, that sure was a sentence. You can encourage people to be prostitutes to keep discontent low. Not only that, but you can also toss dead bodies into a pit instead of bury them so that way you can harvest the organs later to be transplanted into patients. And doing so will get people out of the medical tents faster and get back to work sooner. And that's not the end of it. You can then use the corpses as fertilizer for your hothouse. And believe it or not, that's still not the worst thing that you can do.
When I'm dead, just throw me in the trash.
Eventually, you discover that another settlement known as Winterhome has died out. And that causes your people to start panicking and giving them the ideas to form the Londoners. This is a group of people that want to leave your city because they think that they're doomed with you. And at this point of the game, it opens you up to one of two options to give people a sense of purpose: religious extremism or fascism. Both offer ways to get people to stay. At first, they start out just fine. You get things like morning gatherings or patrols, things to make people feel safe and comfortable. But by the end of it, you can torture people to lower discontent. You can either whip them to death or steam them to death. So far, I've only covered the main scenario called A New Home, but Frostpunk has 3 free scenarios, 2 DLC, and an endless mode. So let's go over those briefly.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
The first of these 3 free scenarios is the Ark, which is my personal favorite and by far the easiest scenario. You start off with 45 engineers and an automaton. Eventually, a worker will show up telling you about a settlement nearby called New Manchester. That guy may or may not survive. If he does, you got an extra hand. However, that person may be kinda useless given how this one plays out. You see, having 45 engineers does kinda limit you in what you can do. Since you're not gonna really gain any more people, you're gonna need extra hands to make things work, and that's where the automatons really shine. And if New Home didn't turn you on to these giant mechanical monstrosities, then this scenario definitely will. And you'll have these automatons doing basically everything. They can do the coal mining, the wood gathering, the plant growing, the scouting. Hell, they'll even work in medical tents and do the research. I don't know how you can conduct research by having nobody there and just having the robots do it, but you can do it. Hell, if you want to take it a step further, you can even have them working in the factory producing more automatons. You basically invented Skynet, steampunk Skynet. Granted, these are things that you can do in basically any scenario, but it's a lot easier to do them in this one. As for the goal of this one, your main objective is to keep plant seeds alive. In order to do that, you have to make sure that the 4 buildings that they're in don't get too cold. If they do, they'll start to freeze over, and you can just warm them back up, but once they freeze over completely, that building is gone. Now, you don't have to make sure all 4 of them survive, you just gotta make sure one of them, but come on. They're gonna try to get all 4 of them. And once you discover that New Manchester needs some help, well, guess what? You can go and lend them a hand. This enters kind of like a bonus objective. You can choose to gather up a bunch of stuff and send them over, including some automatons. If you manage to keep the seeds alive and help out New Manchester, I think you get an achievement for it, but it's honestly kind of satisfying. It's like, not only did I conquer this objective, I went above and beyond. And that's something that Frostpunk really excels at. Giving something to make each scenario last a little longer and make you feel good about yourself. Anyway, that's it for this scenario. Let's move on to the next one.
Every night, I can feel my leg and my arm, even my fingers.
The second free scenario is the refugees, which is all about providing for a seemingly endless group of survivors showing up to your city. It's a very simple premise, but you'll mainly be struggling with housing and food. If you got that under control, then you'll be fine. However, one thing that does tend to happen with me all the time is that I'll start off trying to keep things organized, but by the end of it, I'm just looking for anywhere I can stick a building. And after you're done letting everybody in, you gotta deal with a class war, because this is Frostpunk, and if you think that everything is only gonna be one objective and not throw you any curveballs, well then you came to the wrong game. Now, of course, you can choose to protect the lords that everyone's after, or you can let the mob do what angry mobs do.
The body I've lost.
The last free scenario is Winterhome. That's right, the Winterhome that causes you to become either the Spanish Inquisition or Stalin. In this scenario, you're cleaning up the mess that the previous person in charge caused. It starts off after a riot left the city in ruins, and you have to continue from where the previous guy failed. There are some policies that are already in place, and you have to start by cleaning up the rubble and deleting roads, because Jesus Christ, man. Who let the last guy lead? What the fuck is this organization? Who put the medical tent so far away from the generator? Have you ever played SimCity, man? You gotta segregate that shit. You gotta tear down all the ruins, which will give you a lot of stuff, but it's a little tedious. Not to mention all the people that are gonna get sick during that process. I actually found myself desperately needing multiple infirmaries for this part. Just anything to get people to stop getting sick, stop coughing, just please stop sneezing. But once you start getting things under control, then you have to build a dreadnought, like a land ship or something. And you're given like 9 or 10 days to do it, but like you think, oh, okay, it's fine, I got a lot of time. No, in actuality, you do not. You find yourself in most of these scenarios just going from like, okay, it's fine, everything's going okay, and you look away for just a few seconds and suddenly everything is falling apart. You either forgot to put an engineer somewhere or forgot to put a worker gathering some coal, or you briefly looked away from how much food you have, and next thing you know, something is going wrong. Winterhome is like an extreme version of a new home. Once you manage to get past that first part where you're cleaning up and everyone's sick and you finally get everyone cured and you're like, okay, everything's fine, we can take care of this, it just throws a curveball at you. Like, oh great, the generator's blown up. And depending on how quickly you were able to get that first part done will determine how well you will complete this scenario. This is one of those cases where the things that you did early on, you won't realize the repercussions of until much later. Like for me, the last time I played this, everything seemed like it was going perfectly fine. I was gonna get the whole dreadnought built and everything is gonna be smooth. Then I realized that I didn't upgrade something sooner than I should have, and suddenly I struggled at the end. I didn't actually complete the scenario perfectly like I thought I was going to, all because I didn't research something that I should have done hours ago. This scenario is really unique compared to the other two. It's a lot closer to what the original scenario is like, and it doesn't feel like just a copy of the base scenario. So much happens in Winterhome that's unique to this scenario that it really does feel like something brand new while being very similar. But admittedly, this is where I got a nice taste of that child labor, because admittedly, I never really used it until this part. Not that I had a choice in the matter. Child labor is already a thing that's been enacted when you start this scenario. You're stuck with it. Those kids are gonna suffer. But since they're gonna have to work, you might as well put them to work, and you're gonna need them. Honestly, you're gonna kind of need those kids.
The comrades I've lost.
This DLC is significantly different from all the other scenarios in the game. It's what DLCs should honestly be. It's a very good DLC. The scenario takes place before the world started freezing over, and you're tasked to build a generator. This scenario actually has multiple endings, and instead of purpose, you have to choose to side with your workers or your engineers. On top of the several things you already had to deal with, you now have to deal with the safety of the generator's construction, superstitions, and slavery. Oh joy! It's a really well-made scenario, as after you finish the base thing of building the generator, you can end it there or choose to play through the winter with that generator. If you cut corners when building it, you're gonna start to feel it. On top of the objective for this scenario being completely unique, as well as some of its policies, the way you go about getting some resources is also unique to this scenario. You see, you have 4 places where you can place docks, and you can use them to either bring in new supplies like coal, wood, and steel, or you could use it for fishing. As for your scouts, their primary use is gonna be for gathering food. I mean, they'll get you other stuff too, but it's mainly the food you're looking for. As for workers and engineers, you can always call them in. Seriously, you just pick up the phone, call in, and ask, hey, can I get some more engineers, workers, and maybe some steam cores? And they'll give them to you. It may take a while for them to get there, but they'll give them to you. And if you decide to side with your engineers when it comes to the policies, well, guess what? You also get slave labor. Oh boy, now that's the Frostpunk that I know and love. You just call in and say, hey, can I get some of your convicts so I can use them to work on my generator? Yep. No repercussions there. Speaking of which, this is Frostpunk. If you think dealing with a class war is your only real problem that you're going to have in this one, guess what? Building this generator is not going to be easy. Not in just the sense of having to deal with people and keeping it safe and as well as having the right resources, but also, guess what? Things blow up. What can I say? Natural gas is a hell of a thing. And like I said, this is how DLC should be. Offer new features that build off what's familiar. Unlike the next DLC,
Won't stop hurting.
On the Edge, which is basically a new home, but now you have to trade with other settlements. Okay, that's not entirely fair. There's a few things that are different, but the main thing is the settlement trading. Things that really stand out with this one is that you actually start off working for New London. You know that place that the Londoners wanted to go to? You're kind of like a city-state or an outpost. Your main goal is to gather steel and steam cores, and you send them to London so that way you can get food. Of course, they don't treat you right, and you can choose to rebel against them. This leads you to find other settlements to team up with in order to survive, trading your steel for whatever resources they have. You establish relations with them, you help them out with their problems. On top of that, you don't have a generator. You have to do whatever you can in order to keep your people warm. That's where the braziers come in. But even they have somewhat of a limit if you don't put enough into research. The other main thing about this one is that it is the most boring scenario in the game. In my opinion, this is honestly the worst scenario of the bunch. The main issue I have with it is that there's a lot of downtime where I find myself not having much to do. The other scenarios, you can find yourself constantly finding something to do and keeping the pace going, which is something that I really like about Frostpunk. Frostpunk at no point felt like I needed to leave the game alone to just generate something for me. There was always something I could accomplish in every in-game day. Whether it be gathering certain resources or enacting a policy or researching something, there was always something to work towards. But with On the Edge, there's a lot of times where I'm just waiting for the food to come in so I can trade something with another person so I can get that and then do whatever I want to do. It's definitely the weakest scenario by far. And what adds insult to injury on this one is that it's only slightly cheaper than the last autumn, so you'd expect it to be somewhere near the same quality, but honestly, it's not. It's not terrible, but I did find myself being a bit more bored on this one. It did feel a lot less exciting. But hey, they have 7 game modes, and if only one of them isn't that great, that's pretty good. The trading that you do helps you build relationships with other settlements, and that's something that you need to know when it comes to playing on Endless. There's no real purpose in playing it when you can just play Endless.
You feel it too, don't you?
Because unlike On the Edge, Endless is exactly what you would expect. It's completely endless, but you do have the option of starting by building a generator, so that's cool. Well, hot. 10 out of 10 joke. What isn't a joke is that Frostpunk also now has a board game and a sequel. Both are currently available. In fact, I'll be talking about the sequel really soon, so subscribe to see that when it comes out. As for the board game, it's pretty good. And I haven't played it in person, but I did play it on Tabletop Simulator, and I will say it's pretty good. It's a very good video game to board game adaptation. Some things in the board game are unique to it, and some things are just missing from it, but it does offer a very similar experience to the video game without just being the video game. And it's up to 4 players, but you don't actually need 4 players to play it, which is good because me trying to get a group of people together to play this thing is going to be impossible. However, maybe I should pick up a copy. Let me just see online what the price is. Oh, I hope you enjoyed this video. Talking about Frostpunk was something that I've been wanting to do for about 4 or 5 years. I first played this game right before the pandemic came out, which is kind of funny seeing as how, sickness is a big part of the game. Let me know in the comments what you think of Frostpunk if you've played it, and if I've managed to convince you to give the game a try, let me know. I would love to know if I've actually influenced somebody. I should also mention that this game is available on both Xbox and PlayStation, and it plays very well on a controller, like surprisingly well. I think it might even be on Game Pass, so if you have that, give it a try. Sorry for taking such a long time to get a video out. I know it's been a few weeks, and I've been just kind of busy getting some things situated. But I do have some good news. We got a partnership with Zenny, so if you're looking for some new eyewear, check out the link in the description. If you see something you like, you'll get 10% off with that link, and you will be able to support the channel by doing so. Until next time, stay warm, stay comfy, stay safe, and remember, I love you!